10 marks in the chat. That's good because like the sound, it's okay, and video. So Emmanuel is like the founder of no-code platform called Babel, and lots of you, I think, already started building something on this. Also, people would like to know how you can like use platform as Babel, because I know you're like all expert in lots of platforms. Yeah, you know all the possibilities in different guys. Yeah.
I mostly know Babel, but yeah.
Yeah, mostly Babel. So we would like to hear how the startup guys, the non-technical people mostly, yeah, like product-minded people, business-minded people, how they can build products faster, yeah, like using Babel. And what do you think, how it will change the development in the future? What about the competition with like technical guys? Yeah, like really like hard stuff, technical guys. How do we compete with them? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of questions. And by the way, first of all, I'm very happy to be here, and don't hesitate to at some point interrupt. I mean, I think what I have in mind is to speak for like maybe 35, 40 minutes and then answer questions. But if at some point I say something that really if you're expecting me to say something that would be interesting and I turn out not to say it, feel free to interrupt at any time. Like, this is really totally fine. Okay. Just a little bit of background before I start. So I'm originally from France myself. I left my home country 15 years ago now, so quite some time ago.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Don't talk about, I feel old. Started living in Asia for 4 years first as a management consultant, very far from technology, actually. So I started coding as a kid. Like, I was spending quite some time there, like writing things on MS-DOS and Windows, actually, quite a long time ago. And then during college, where I did mathematics and then consulting, I was pretty far from technology, which is actually important because I think it's important not to be too technical. Like, you need very strong technical talent on the team. And my co-founder, Josh, is extremely technical. And now I became technical and I wrote tens of thousands of lines of code. But when I started with him, actually, I was not technical. I had to learn how to code again. And that's actually important because you need to put yourself in the shoes of the non-technical person. So back to my background quickly. So I spent about 4 years in Asia, a little bit in Japan, mostly in China as a management consultant. And then that took me to business school in the US. Not exactly sure what I wanted to do in business school. I actually thought I would be working in the investment side pretty traditionally. And it's during business school that various experiences led me back to entrepreneurship and technology, where I basically rediscovered what I used to love doing as a kid, like when I was 15, which was building digital products that people would use. Like when I was like 13, 14, I would build those little software to help learning our English words, like in the class, like, with our teachers. And I would like distribute my little software in like 3.5 inches floppy disk, like, that was like a very long time ago.
Was it like successful? How many users have you got?
I probably got like 5 or 6 users, but I remember I was selling them like about $10 per piece. So I think I made like something like $60 or something, which when you're 14 is actually a lot of money. Yeah. So that was great. That was great. I mean, I never made really that for the money. It was more like, but like more seriously. So what I rediscovered when I was in business school was the pleasure of building a digital product and having people to use it. And I didn't launch anything. I worked on a bunch of ideas with technical people because at the time I was non-technical. So I actually experienced myself firsthand the problem we're trying to solve here for a lot of people. But I rediscovered that. And that led me to the end of school where I graduated without a job. And it's only like 3 or 4 weeks after graduation that someone connected me to Josh. And Josh had already started the company. And I joined him actually after our first coffee meeting. So that was like kind of a partnership at first sight type of thing. The reason why I started the company, and I want to tell that story because first of all, he was the one with the initial idea. I mean, obviously after 8 years, we've been on that for 8 years together. So I've completely embraced it, but it's really his thing initially. His personal story is that he was at a hedge fund for some time and then he quit and he wasn't exactly sure what he wanted to do with his life. And someone recruited him to be a tech founder for his company, for their company. And that was like not a very high technology startup. It was really like building a web app, solving a particular problem. So very much what Bubble is for today, actually. And so the product they were trying to solve was, building a better tool for people that put keywords on pictures, like a professional image keyworder, which today is less relevant because, you can crowdsource that, with either Instagram and social networks or machine learning. But in 2010, you actually didn't have all those things. And so you actually had people, that would go for like the big photo star companies, tagging the images. And so they thought that this guy that recruited Josh as a tech co-founder thought he had a better idea for a tool. And what happened is that, so Josh worked with him for about a year. They launched the product. The product was working very well. I mean, it got good market reception. Like most image keyworders they were talking to were pretty happy to pay $50 a month to use the tool. The problem is there were probably one or 200 people in the world that has that job. And it's something that just didn't think about. When he started, Josh was looking for, he found the guy interesting, and so he didn't necessarily look at the market. And so eventually Josh ended up quitting because it was not sustaining their lives, or definitely his life, especially him being an engineer, the expected income he could make on the market was really high. And so because he quit, eventually it killed the business. And Josh felt pretty bad about it because it was like definitely something good for the world. I mean, at a small scale, it was like for maybe 200 people, but definitely these 200 people, daily life was better with this piece of software being built. And the real problem, the reason why it didn't work out is because fundamentally it was too expensive to maintain, to sustain an engineer. And so Josh started thinking, if there were a way for the co-founder in question, like the founder, the one that had the product vision, to build that himself, he could very much create a business that's not going to be the next Facebook, but it's going to make 200 people's lives much easier, and it's going to pay, the bills, and probably quite nicely for him and his family. And so at the margin, the world would just be better if this thing had existed. And that was the initial idea behind Bubble, basically, because then Josh was like, okay, how can we make technology cheaper and empower this guy to do that himself? And that's exactly what Bubble is about. I mean, Bubble is about, empowering people that have a product vision, that know a business well, to build the tool, the application they want to build themselves without writing code, with an interface that still requires some learning curve, but nothing like, years of software engineering at school. And so when we met in June, Josh started working on that. I think the first commit was in December or January of the previous year. So he had a very, very early prototype that was not doing too much, but it's actually that prototype that kind of convinced me to be like, oh, that looks like it's interesting. And so we met for that coffee. I said yes, basically the following day, went back to Boston and sold my furniture, and we started working on this together. And the first year of the company were a little bit different than most startups, because bootstrap for many years, actually, like for 5 years, for 5 years it was just the two of us. We never tried to get a ton of market traction too soon, but instead felt like, you know what, let's really nail that with, maybe 10, 15 people that we know are willing to bet their entire businesses on us. I mean, because fundamentally, these people had a company they wanted to build, and, had we not delivered on, empowering them to build what they wanted, the business would not have worked. And so that was a pretty big responsibility. And we felt like, let's find 10 people like this and make sure they can do exactly what they want without code, which is already an extremely ambitious goal, by the way, because one of the challenges in the no-code space, today it's a little bit popular. Honestly, that might backfire at some point, because you have to realize how much skepticism there is around the no-code space. And today, because it's more fashionable, people are less skeptical, but if you talk to an engineer, they still are skeptical. And the reason, and the truth is, people are actually right to be skeptical, because no-code tools have started being built in the 80s, and we're still teaching code in schools, which means, most people that have come to market and saying, hey, I have this product, you can do anything you want without code, were just not delivering on that promise. And so that has built up over time, and over like 20, 30 years, where in 2014, 2015, where we would go talk to engineers with a product that was actually already fairly powerful at the time, people were like, no, that's just impossible. No, you can't do that. And so the reason why we decided...
I'm sorry, could you please talk a little bit slower? A lot of these guys are not native speakers. Yeah, we know you, you've been living in New York, for 15 years for now.
You're right. Yes. And so the skepticism makes that...
Could we move on to the product and how you help your top companies to raise investments? Yeah, I watched your interview with the family. You said you got a couple of guys who raised some couple of millions, and also been accepted to top accelerators in US. Mm-hmm. So could you please tell us some details about them? how they started and how is it scalable. Yeah, because like lots of technical people are like really worried about the scalability of no-code tools. Like, okay, I can use it for like half a year, maybe. I mean, like, how many users do I need? Like, I mean, what's the limit? Or there is no limit.
So just to talk a little bit about the product, to make very clear what Bubble is about compared to the other no-code tools on the market. So what you can do with Bubble is much more about visual programming than no-code. It's personally a denomination I prefer, meaning it's extremely open-ended. And I will get to your question around scalability and performance because that's actually important. It's extremely open-ended. And today there is not much you can do anymore if you know how to use a tool. So what that means in practice is there is more learning curve. So it's probably about, I mean, a lot of people in the audience would know better how long it takes because they went through that process more than me, but I estimate at least, 4 or 5 hours to start really understanding the basics and probably 10, 15 to start feeling comfortable with the tool, which is much longer than most of the other tools. That's one thing. It's a tool that lets you make mistakes, which means you can do bugs in Bubble. Like if you don't set it up properly, you're not going to have the expected behavior. And that's actually the reason why it's so powerful. If a tool doesn't let you make mistakes, don't be fooled. It won't let you do what you want to do. And like tools like, Webflow is beautiful, but you can go wrong with Webflow. You can do a typo, but that's pretty much it. You're not going to have like the wrong behavior in your application. In Bubble, you will, because it's open-ended. So that's what the trade-off is. If you want something where you can do pretty much anything, you're going to have to learn it and to tinker a little bit and fix your own mistakes, which is fine. And that's where we're much closer to programming. And to give examples of what you can do, so it's really, any web application, it's not for native applications yet, but any web application with a database connecting to APIs, account management, and to use famous websites that are very representative of what you can build on it. It's, Airbnb, Twitter, Facebook, a CRM, an HR management tool to manage your employees. All these kind of tools are what you can build on Bubble. It's sometimes hard to do what you can build because when you start, you really start from a white page. I mean, when you create an app, we have kind of a placeholder thing, but if you delete everything, it's going to be a white page and you can literally build anything. I've seen people build games, for instance, on Bubble. And so, yes, the primary market of the people we're trying to help, because there is this learning curve and because it's so flexible, is entrepreneurs. And today, I think we are the only tool in the no-code space that really delivers on the promise. Hey, you want to build like a web-based company, a web-based startup, you can build it on us. You can do that on the other tools. What you can do on Webflow.
Can you verify what's the average time to learn, most of the Bubble features? Like, what's the average time if I, for example, go to you, hey, Emmanuel, I don't know anything about Bubble. For how long do I need to, learn about it?
It's quite hard to answer because, honestly, it depends on people. If you're a good student and you do the lessons that we have twice, which I highly recommend, you do each of them. So, it's 11 lessons. Each of them takes, let's say, 10 minutes to 20 minutes, time 11. It's probably 3 hours in total. Plus building your own application, trying to do something, it doesn't work, but you go back to it. I think after 5 hours, you start doing, okay, now I get it. Does that mean you're going to be able to do everything? No, because we have a lot of advanced features. But there are a lot of advanced features you're not going to need at first. So that's why it's hard to answer your question because it's like, going back and forth. You build something, then you feel like you need something new. You either look at our documentation, which is not great, we're working on it, or you go to the manual, the forum, which is much more active. And we actually have a Russian section of the forum where you can ask, hey, how I want to do that, how can I do this? If you post that in English, usually you have an answer within 10 to 15 minutes, it's super fast. And then you're going to learn again. So that's why it's hard. What I can tell you based on my experience, I've seen people get it in 2 hours. I've seen some people get closer to 6 hours. So I think it's somewhere in the middle. But that doesn't mean you will know everything then. But you'll know enough to start building something that will be functional and work. And so back to what I was saying. So our primary, and I will answer your questions around people starting companies on top of Bubble. So we're really aiming for entrepreneurs instead of designers. I mean, if we have designers using Bubble, it's great. But if it's a designer that wants to build a full product, we really aim for people that have a product vision for a business problems they're trying to solve, and they go for it. So that's why, entrepreneurs are usually a better fit for us. We have a few, startup employees when, the startup is being limited by engineering, not enough engineers, where they start using us. But in practice, I would say 30% of our users start company on top of us, and that represents probably 70% of our revenue. Because the way our pricing is set up, we try to be as cheap as possible, and we only start charging more money when you start having more traction as a business, or more traffic. And obviously, this is a pricing that means that startups would eventually pay us more when they succeed versus someone that uses us for a personal project or inside a team. And so it's a little bit of a VC model, if you will. Like most people that start companies on top of us, they don't work out, they don't succeed, and it's fine. Like I'm okay with this way, because at some point what I want is I want everyone to get the bubble skill, because once people have the skill, they will come back to us even if the company doesn't work out. Like at the same time, I want a few success stories. And that's why I'm saying we like a VC model. We want every year to get like a few very successful startups that can prove that our technology works at scale. And those are the companies that, for instance, I was mentioning in that talk that you watched at the family. So in terms of success stories, we have the one I keep going back because it's going to be hard to do better. Like the most impressive we had is a business that has processed over $1 billion of business volume in the fintech space in New York, in the US, selling loans to people, like a personal finance company. This is like a scale that not many businesses, even built with traditional technologies, would reach. So it's going to be hard to do better, but I'm very much hoping so. But then when we look at the track record of some of our companies, every year we have probably at least that I know of 5 or 6 companies that raise like a significant round from like renowned investors, or would get into an accelerator like Techstars or Y Combinator or these kind of places. How do we help them? I mean, excuse me. Honestly, we help them by just building the products that lets them do what they want to do at this stage. That's kind of the most important. We're currently working on ways to be a better partner with startups, because one thing we realized is that a lot of people, when they build on Bubble, they start spending too much time building because it's fun. Because once you've done those initial hours, you actually have a lot of time. You can create something that works, and people play a lot. And they don't necessarily spend all the time they should marketing their product and trying to grow it. And this is a problem because, well, first of all, for us, as I was saying, our pricing is set up that we only start making money on companies when they do well themselves. And doing well themselves doesn't mean they have a beautiful product. That means they have a beautiful product with a lot of users. And so we're trying to find ways to push people on the platform that do well to grow their business better. And that led us to the idea of the accelerator that we are working on right now. Basically creating a program.
Can we move on to the topic about like no-code specialists? Like what's their demand on the market? For example, in US, like what's the demand for no-code guys like Anne, as Nick, like who can like build something like connect different services, no-code tools, Bubble plus different like Zapier, so on and so on. So what's the demand? How businesses actually like are eager to hire these no-code guys instead of technical guys, tech-minded guys?
So it's a bit hard to estimate the demand. I mean, it's not like, there is like one source of truth there.
Yeah. Now we're talking about like your estimates.
If you go to Upwork, for instance, 3 years ago, literally no one would look for like, no-code tools. Today, it's actually pretty frequent. Like when I go from time, like I just scroll through projects, I would say 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 5 mention like no-code tools. I think what's happening is 2 things. First of all, people have realized that, teaching everyone how to code and turning everyone into an engineer is a fallacy. So when we started Bubble in 2012, people were like, why do you do this? First of all, it can't work. Second of all, everybody's going to learn how to code. What we realized, like what I think people realized 2 years ago and last year, is that first of all, not everyone is going to learn how to code. And second of all, product have actually gotten pretty good. So now, when people say, hey, this can't work, we can say, well, actually, look at that example. Look at these companies that is using us. And so that's why the demand has gotten up quite sharply. The main driver, I think, for companies hiring specialists instead of founders trying to build the company themselves is pretty simple. I mean, at the end of the day, it's cost. This is just because it's much cheaper, because it's faster to build on. The reason why no code is, and Bubble in particular, is so much cheaper to build on than traditional code is because more people can do it, because you don't need to have a CS degree, and it's much faster to build on. Once you've done those initial learning, this initial learning on Bubble, you can build something like a very functional and good-looking marketplace, like Airbnb type website, probably in 2 weeks, like depending on the complication that you have. Like you can really launch to market very quickly at a speed that engineers can do. And so it's hard to estimate how much cheaper it is. My estimate personally is probably 50 times, like where you would pay $100,000 a local development shop in the US. Eastern Europe might be cheaper, but in the US, you can probably find someone that would do it for like $2,000 or $3,000 on Bubble. And that's the reason why I think it's a very promising field for people to specialize on, because all those traditional agencies building things for people are going to be disrupted. And when I mean disrupted, I mean that at the actual true meaning of disruption, like low-end disruption, meaning a cheaper technology comes in and replaces the old one. That's what has happened in technology over the years. And so it's actually something we're going to start embracing a little bit more strongly. We've been, so far, we have a real ecosystem of Bubble agencies that has started around us. We've not tried to, what we do is we list them on our website and we sell them like a special plan to give access to more features. But we're actually thinking about starting to set up a marketplace ourselves, because we still get a ton of requests, from people asking us, hey, this technology looks great because it's cheap, but I don't have the time to build that myself. Can you find an agency for me? And so we're actually going to be investing in the ecosystem probably before the end of the year, actually. It's something I want to do carefully, because as soon as you start being the middleman between clients and agencies, and if people are not happy, which can still happen, then you're in the middle of it, and so you have to know how to handle it. The other reason why people are very keen on using technologies like Bubble on an outsourcing basis, like having someone else build that for them, is because what you get from your specialist is actually something you can edit yourself in the Bubble editor, which is actually very valuable if you're not a technical person yourself. Because before that, what would happen is that you would just get a lot of files with code, and if you're not a technical person yourself, you're like, okay, what do I do with this? And basically, you have to hire another engineer to make changes if needed. While here, what we created essentially is more of a common language between technical people and non-technical people. So you can have like a technical team building on Bubble, maybe extend it with code if needed, and you transfer that to the client, and the client can still make modifications themselves, which is extremely powerful and something we've seen more and more over the years.
Okay, so how do you compare like technical people and in topic of venture capitalism, yeah, like in raising money, I think the investors don't really care, yeah, like what platform you use, yeah, what's your tech stack, yeah, if it's no code or like if it's like some tech guys build it, yeah, if the economy is good, it's like no difference, right?
Yeah, well, so it's true today. 3 years ago, it was not true. Three years ago, they'd be like, oh, you're building on this kind of like Bubble? What is that? Now, because now we're bigger and the whole space is bigger, it has changed a little bit. In practice, though, you're right. Investors don't care. As long as you grow, they're fine. They're not going to ask you any question about the tech stack. First of all, they're non-technical for most of them, so they don't necessarily have a strong sense of what you should be building on. And at the end of the day, if you're growing, it's working. That's kind of the only thing they care about. But again, like 3 years ago, we would have, users emailing us and say, hey, can you write something for me to explain what Bubble is to my investors, and not very clear, they don't understand. Now, I think it's not a problem anymore. We just need to keep, doing better and improving the product. But I think now the brand is strong enough that if someone is building on top of, AWS, no one will tell them, oh, wow, you're depending on AWS. AWS is big enough of a company to be fine. We're not as big yet, but the more recognition we get from the market, the better.
So I think we got also a couple of questions from our other speakers. I know they have that personal question. So ladies first, Anne, let's do it.
Thank you, Emmanuel. It's really super interesting what you're saying. And I want to ask you about bubble development. As you know, you just super recently acquired investments about like $6 million, as I remember, like last year. Yeah.
Last year, yeah.
Why so late? Yeah, because you're on the market since 2012, as I remember. And where you gonna like focus on in the future, like with these investments, and why not so much? Like the round was like not so huge, I would say.
So why so late? Because I think, again, back to the skepticism I was talking about, it takes a long time. The short answer is we felt the product cycle in the early years would be too slow for fundraising. Because as soon as you fundraise, you need to be able within the next year and a half to show significant growth. If you just go to investors again to raise another round and be, hey, the product is better, but I don't have that many more users, you're not going to be able to raise more money and you're going to go out of business. And so what we felt is that between 2012 and 2015, the product was not good enough to just go to market and be like, hey, everyone come using us. That would just not have worked because we had too many limitations. People would have they would have looked at the products, they would have asked, hey, can I do this, can I do that? We would have said no, and they would have left. And that would have been a missed opportunity. And so what we realized in 2018 is that it was not the case anymore. It was pretty rare that someone would reach out to us and say, hey, can I build this? And we would say no. So we had reached a pretty mature product. It's not perfect. There are a lot of things to improve, but you can always find workarounds now to do pretty much anything, which means today I'm much more okay multiplying my user base by 10. And so that makes me a good fit for venture backed. And so to tell you the truth, two companies when we started not in 2012, but in 2013, 2014, they raised a round. They went to Y Combinator. One of them raised a round from Andreessen Horowitz, the biggest name of the Valley, but they raised too soon. And at the end of the runway, so 18 months later, the product was better, but they didn't have many users and they went out of business. Mm-hmm. Now, to your question around, is it a lot or not? We've been so lean. Money is dangerous for a business, especially for a startup. You don't want too much money too soon because then you burn it in a way that's not sustainable. And it's going to be, you're going to be spending and growing, but not efficiently enough to raise the next round. So you have to be a little bit careful here. And so for us, we felt 6.25, between 6 and 7 million was a pretty good place for us, given the revenue we already have for the next year and a half, basically, next 2 years. And so what we're planning to do with this, we were very understaffed before the round. So we're basically investing on kind of everything. Technology is a very big piece of it still, especially scalability. I realize I haven't talked about performance at scale, but that's really something where you need engineers to optimize things. Growth, which we've never done so far really. And so now we want to start the machine to actually have a model. It's working pretty well now. We're much more known today than we were 6 months ago. So we're doing good things, but there are so many opportunities, so many things we should be more aggressive on, education. I want to be in schools. There are a lot of things that, take cash. And then the success side, which goes a little bit with engineering, just make sure, we have the right success team to support everyone. Strategically, we're still focusing very much on people starting to try companies. In practice, about 40% of people that use us don't actually start a company, but they use us for a tool inside an existing company. Mm-hmm. A very common use case is people building internal tools, for instance, building a custom CRM, because Airtable is beautiful and great, but as soon as you want customized behavior, it's not going to work. And so they use a lot of Bubble for that. We're not trying to get into the enterprise space quite yet, because it's a very different market, very different payment structure, very different expectations. And so that's probably something we'll want to do 2 years from now. Part of this, that said, with our initial focus on people starting companies, I want to start pushing more on our ecosystem. And so the ecosystem of agencies, plugins, templates. We're probably we just started a bootcamp initiative where people can teach instructors, while bootcamps are coming from the community, for instance. We're probably going to start pretty soon a coaching marketplace, actually, because people are looking for coaches. So creating many ways, not necessarily to actually, I don't necessarily want this to become a revenue driver, but more to make sure that if people want to learn the tool, they have the right things all organized by us, because at the end of the day, we're the best place to know who the good coaches are.
Yeah, you have really super strong and powerful community. I think it's like the main feature how you are growing. Yeah,
I mean, I am very grateful on that one. This is a little bit, I think, because of our bootstrapping history, for instance, honestly, the fact that we didn't raise money, because what happened during the first 5 years, it was just the two of us, like me and Josh. And so I was doing, building the product, doing all success myself, like answering every emails and everything. And so the community knew that. And so they were more willing to help me personally in helping new users, because they knew that if I were spending my time answering emails, I would not be able to build a product. And so then, the culture was set up where, old users would be helping new users, and that's just, kept going. If you go back in time enough in the forum, like in 2015, for the first 3-4 months, it was just me answering. Like what was happening, that users would email me. I would tell them, can you copy paste your question on the forum, because I want activity there, and then I'll answer there. They would copy paste, I would answer, and that was it. And about 3-4 months in, people started helping each other, and then it just took off.
Oh, cool. Cool. Thank you.
So what about your question, Nikita? I know you want to ask about the acceleration program, or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. So hi, Emmanuel. This is Nick from No Code Academy in Moscow. First of all, really happy to meet you in person, even though we're online now. So the question that I have is actually a question on behalf of our team, because I'm also working as a product manager in Higher School of Economics Business Accelerator. And we've recently seen a job post on your website telling everyone that you're looking for acceleration head in New York. So we are interested. What are your plans for that? Are you planning to have your own acceleration program to help your startups that are doing their businesses on Bubble grow? Or just tell us about your plans, if it's possible.
So I actually touched that a little bit earlier when I said, we realize we have a lot of people building on Bubble, but not necessarily making the best of the products they've built as companies. So what we think is that we have a pretty valuable asset. It's available to everyone, like everyone can use Bubble, but if we can pick, the best teams to build on Bubble, because Bubble is so cheap compared to writing code, we could actually create an investor that has good accelerators that has good return compared to other accelerators. Because what other accelerators have, it's the network, the mentorship, maybe the brand for fundraising, but actually at some point, investors don't care about the brand, they care about growth, but that's all they have. What we have is, we can have the mentors, we're pretty well connected and we can build that. We can have, the training, like make sure we bring on board, the best teachers and everything for sessions. But then we also have a technology that is very cheap to build on. And so the idea of creating an accelerator is to basically leverage that. To be very honest, we're looking for a financial partner that would be interested in the financial upside. Me personally, I'm more interested in the success stories and the financial upside, because at the end of the day, we're still at a phase where I want to prove that Bubble can scale and create real success stories. And so the accelerator is a way to create those success stories. And so just to make sure you invest either money and time or just time, we still, figure out what the right model is on a few people, because we feel like, they're very, very bright. And if we help them accelerate what they're building on Bubble, they could actually create meaningful businesses. There are a few details. So I'm still looking for the accelerator head. So it's something you want to be pretty careful with that hire. So I want to make sure I hire the right person. There are still a few things I'm figuring out. Should we take people that already have a product built on Bubble, or should we take people with an idea that we know could be built on Bubble, but they don't have a product yet? Should it be more like a startup studio versus an accelerator? I don't know. I'm not sure. I go back and forth, and it's actually something coming out in conversations with candidates that we're talking to, because we're looking for people that have already run either an investment firm or an accelerator, to make sure that we bring that knowledge. Because I've never been through an accelerator myself, so I don't want to be reinventing the wheel everywhere. But it's something we think is really exciting because, again, among all the no-code tools that you can think of, we're probably the only tool that actually can really power companies that grow beyond the MVP stage. And so I want to leverage that as much as possible with this accelerator.
Also, there is a question, like everyone asks, what's the limits of Bubble, with which monthly actual active users you should switch to the like normal development? Like, what's this limit?
So, I mean, my vision in long term is that there shouldn't be limits. First of all, that's what we're aiming for. Today, if you become overnight Airbnb or Instagram, we'll have some problems, yes. The good news is you won't, because it does not work that way. So that's fine. Joke aside, it's very hard to answer your question and that's where, education is so important for Bubble, because it really depends how you build your application. You can build it in a smart way, or you can build it in a wrong way. And if you build it in a wrong way, it might be slow and not handle well 100 users. If you build it in the right way, you can probably, like we've seen people having like 500,000 page views, unique visitors a day, and being fine. And it really depends. Like sometimes, you have applications that do very complicated workflows and data flows that have 5 users, but they max out capacity all the time because one of these actions is going to be iterating on a list of like 1,000 things, and you have to do things. And, at some point, I can't make that fast. Like I just can't, right? But then some other people have a much more optimal way to design the application. And so what we're working on is better content and better debugging tool to help you flag opportunities for you to improve. We're also spending a lot of time optimizing things automatically if we can, but there will always be limits. At some point, I've seen crazy things. I've seen, people building Bubble pages with like 1,000 elements on them. 1,000 elements on a page, it can't be fast. It's impossible. Like it's just too many megabytes to download, but now to answer your question in a more practical terms, I think today if you move to dedicated when needed, you can go to Series C at a startup funding range, like, the kind of companies that you would raise, like probably, 20, 30, 50 million. Like these companies that did like this $1 billion of revenue, of business volume, that's the kind of amount they had raised for their business. It's a fintech space, so numbers are all a little bit different there, but you could go there. If it's much bigger than that, that might be challenging. On the flip side though, the beauty of our model is that once we'll have one company that gets closer to the limit, we'll do what we can to make them go beyond the limit. And then other people will benefit from the work we did for them. Because once we optimize something for someone, we optimize it for everyone. Obviously, it's the same code base. So I understand the concern. Like it's a real concern that people have, I'm going to build something that's not going to scale. On the flips, like I'll say 2 things. This is our first business priority to make sure, like the most important thing for me is if someone starts building on Bubble and succeeds and grows, I don't want them to leave. And I'll do whatever we can to stay. Does that mean we'd be able to solve everything overnight? Probably not. But we'll do whatever we can and we'll find ways to make it work. Because for 2 reasons, morally, I think it's important. Like if people trust us to launch, I don't want to fail on them, like 2 years later, what their business actually is doing well. And also from a business perspective, this is where we make more money from people that succeed, first of all, and then it proves the whole Bubble technology for everyone. The last thing I would say is, if you hire a developer, it's not going to scale either. You're going to have problems, like scaling pains happen in software, whether you use code or no code. If you're a traditional technology, you're going to have to rewrite an entire thing because the first engineer you had didn't think that you might have 10,000 users at the same time. You're going to have to rewrite everything. It's going to take 3 months. You're going to have a lot of stress and you're going to sweat a lot as a founder. It's the same with Bubble.
Yeah.
What that?
Lots of legacy that you have and you have to rewrite it all the time.
And actually, from that perspective, I would actually argue no code is better because no code is faster to refactor because it's faster to build up. I'm not a bullshitter, so I'm not going to say it's all fine, all pink, and it's all going to be easy. There will be, first of all, it's a great problem to have, to get to the limits of bubble within a few months. If you do that, congratulations, because that means your business is doing well. And there are challenges, and sometimes, we might reach out or you reach out to us and we'll tell you, look, we're not going to be able to solve this the ideal way, but if you do this that way, that would be probably acceptable for the next 3 months or something. But at the same time, this is true for any technology, not just bubble.
Good. Emmanuel, can we please move on to real examples? What are the most common features people use right now? What's trending right now in bubble? You mentioned CRM systems, right? And lots of our guys in chat, they're asking, could you please share more examples? What people are building right now? What trends do you see?
I mean, when you ask an app on bubble, we ask you what you're trying to build. So I have rough numbers here. It's hard to give categories because each application honestly can be pretty different. So in general, I mean, it's about 1/3 of the applications we see are some kind of marketplace. When you have buyers and sellers of a product, sometimes a digital product, sometimes a physical product, sometimes a coaching a coaching marketplace. So that's one big part.
Maybe one day you'll be arrival to Shopify.
I mean, we already are in some ways, because if you want to use us to sell your own goods on the web, you can use Bubble. But I don't really see that us competing, because Shopify is not for tech startups. Shopify is for people that want to sell what they own to people. They want to have an online store. Here, I'm talking about a marketplace, which is like Airbnb. You can't build Airbnb on Shopify. You can build Airbnb on Bubble. That's a fundamental difference. The second big bucket is, SaaS workflow productivity tools. We've seen someone building an invoicing tool, a way to produce your invoices for freelancers faster. We've seen people building so it's an enterprise product to manage your culture inside your company. So a way to get feedback from your employees and, try to administrate a little bit the culture conversation in the company, which is a problem when companies start having 20, 30 people, where you can actually charge a lot of money for that. So it's probably another third is, productivity tools, managing data in a way that makes sense for the end user. So, culture, feedback from everyone. And then the last third is social networks of some kind, dating apps, connecting people with each other. At the end of the day, when you look at tech startups, except if you do something like Bubble or something like, Notion, which is an actual tool where you can build things, or if you do machine learning stuff or sophisticated stuff, most websites are in one of the three buckets I described, Upwork, beautiful company, it's a marketplace. Airbnb, beautiful company, it's a marketplace. Twitter, it's a social network. What could I say? QuickBook, you can manage your financials, so that would go in the invoicing type of thing. It's very advanced and sophisticated, but at the end of the day, all these applications, what they do is, it's a database, and they connect to external services to enrich the data if it makes sense. And that's the kind of thing you can build on top of us.
I also would like to ask your personal question. When I watched your interview with the family, you also shared that you have plans to have some mobile apps. Yeah, you want to move to mobile, but that's is it so far away? Can we expect we will see it? Because mobile market is as strong as ever, and I don't know, there are only a couple of tools I know that are really good for building mobile apps, no code. What's about Bubble? Are you gonna go to that direction, or you don't want to compete with the guys who do this?
No, I definitely want to get into that direction. I mean, the long-term vision for the company is to do everything, because I think we're in a space where eventually one company will become a major programming platform. And so I want to be that platform. It's a big project, and so I don't want to do it poorly. So I hope we can do that next year. I can't promise. On the flip side, though, two things I would say is Bubble works great on mobile if you do web mobile. And web mobile is actually very good. Like, go to Airbnb.com on your phone. It's like the app, honestly. Like, you can do pretty much, you can book apartments. Like, go to Facebook on your phone and it's Facebook. You don't need to open the application. So that's the kind of things we support pretty well. And the other thing I would say, that one is a little bit more technical, but if you absolutely need, if you're using Bubble for your web application, and if you absolutely need a native application, there are ways to wrap a web app into an app that goes in a phone. You have to be a little bit technical to do that, but a ton of people on the forum, it's one of the most discussed topic in our forum. What I would say is, when you're early in a company, when you start building your business for the first time, having an app is not necessarily ideal, because then you're going to have to wait for Apple and Google to approve it. And, you have all those, it's going to slow down a lot your speed of iteration. While if it's web, every second someone load the page, they will see the latest version, which I think is much more powerful. Now, there are a few tools on the market that work well for better than us for native. One thing you realize pretty quickly, though, is that on the backend functionality and like actual workflows and being able to control what the application does, it's pretty limited. And so what we've seen, some people sometimes use some of these tools just for the front end and then use Bubble for the backend and the web version, because usually those services can expose and it can connect to external APIs. And so Bubble can behave like an API. Because like Glide is beautiful, for instance, but you're not going to go much further than, displaying data on a Google Sheet.
Thank you. Guys, more questions from you. You are like Bubble experts.
Yeah, I would like to ask you, like, if it's so easy to build your products if you are not technical developer and so on, what do you think? How does no-code movement influence the economy in general? So there will be it will increase really profitable and good businesses, or it will increase only the number of new apps, which is not needed.
Both. Both. Yeah. Most apps will not be useful, but it's okay. The impact on the economy is going to be that today, technology is one of the biggest spend of the business world, not just startups, like any company. And at the same time, it's the biggest bottleneck, because even if companies are putting a ton of money, you have so little, the number of talent is so little, then it slows down everything. And so now we're in a situation where businesses, they plan today the web application, the web experience they want for their users maybe 2 years from now. And God knows what the world will look like in 2 years. And that time is so expensive, it's just too slow. And so platforms like Bubble, by making it cheaper, but even more important, faster to build on, will lead to like a lot of value creation. I think the impact on the world will be very good. Yes, there will be a lot of applications that are useless, but it's fine. They don't take too much time to build. So that's the first thing. Then the second thing, for the more specifically the startup world, I think we're going to see more and more profitable businesses that don't raise money. Precisely like back to the reason that I had, the story I had with Josh early on, the founding story of the company. A lot of businesses don't necessarily offer like gigantic market valuations, so they can't really raise money, and instead they're just going to be building, small businesses that happen to be happening online, very automatable, that will create a very nice living for the founders, which I think is something really exciting, personally.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I see some people asking questions around Microsoft, actually.
Yeah. They're
which
like
is interesting.
asking you about what's your like competitive advantage or something. Can you share this? Like, how could you like survive all the competitors who are gonna like rise up, right? Especially from like big guys like enterprises like Google, Microsoft.
Right. So, first of all, we had a pretty strong head start. So, we started in 2012. Webflow started in 2013, I think, or even earlier, depending on the story. So we have many years of advance. And, software, for the reason I just described a second ago, is slow to build. And it's not because Microsoft can put like 50 times more money or like 100 times more money than we have that they're going to go 50 times faster. It doesn't work that way. In fact, they might actually go slower, because in the early years, the more engineers you have, the more complicated the product gets, and it becomes complicated to manage it and to move fast. Will they go in our space? Yeah, I mean, Microsoft is in our space. They have a product called Power Apps. Yeah, it's working fairly well. It's not as powerful as Bubble. They're very focusing on the enterprise world, which, by the way, we're not. So I don't compete with them really today, because they want to sell to very big companies where they have very strong relationships as Microsoft, because Microsoft is a huge enterprise software company. So because we don't compete with them, they let us do our own thing. Like we go from like the low end of the market. I'll bet is that 2-3 years from now, our product will be better because more powerful. Because when you start dealing with founders, you have to support more use cases. It will be more beautiful, easier to build. So that's something working on, like, both our user interface, the way you can build beautiful apps, like making something more beautiful, very powerful, and very cheap. And at some point, we'll go to the enterprise world and tell them, why don't you use something that is cheaper and more powerful than, the existing solutions? And then we'll get from the market from, the low end of the market. So you start, as an individual team, and you slowly get the market share. This is a long-term play. But I'm pretty patient. I've been doing this for 8 years, so.
All right, there's another question from our visitors today, and I think it's pretty interesting. What is your final goal? Do you believe that someone like Google could potentially buy Bubble or something like that?
I hope not. I hope we stay independent.
All right.
I hope we stay independent because I think this has the potential to be one of the biggest tech companies in the world. Like software is everywhere. Like Mark Andreessen says, software is eating the world. Software is everywhere. The company that will figure out a way to produce software very cheap will take over the world, the tech world. And I want to be that company. So if we get acquired, if we get acquired, it's because I agree with it. So I probably will not be sad, but it's not the goal I have today. I'm much more excited in trying to keep this as independent and, I guess go public one day. It's probably the way we would do it, because I think this has potential to go extremely far. Now, you never know what happens, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, the competitive landscape might change. Like in practice, most acquisitions don't end well. So I will be very careful before doing something. Like most of the time a company sells its product, the product ends up dying.
Emmanuel, and what about like learning Bubble? I mean, like, do you have some, plans for developing your learning platform or something? Because, like there is a demand, yeah? Not so many people, like, they don't know how to jump in, yeah? They don't know how it will, like,
so
how to start, yeah? And so that's why we have, for example, such guys as Nick and Anna who teach people how to do this, because it's not so easy, even for non-technical people.
So we're doing a complete revamp of our tutorial videos, structuring it in courses. We're rewriting our user manual. We also, I think a lot of it sometimes is because our user interface is not very pretty. And so people have the assumption that it's not as easy as Webflow, for instance, because they have a beautiful interface and our interface is not beautiful. So we're doing a revamp of that. I mean, I'm not a designer. I built that user interface myself, like, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. So we have to evolve on that. So we're going to work on this. That said, again, the fact that Bubble is open-ended and the fact that you can make mistakes will make that it will always be great to have experts that can teach, best practices. Not everyone can, and not everything can go through educational content. We'll do whatever we can to make it better, but some people will always want to talk to someone else, and that's why we have a forum, and that's why, Nick and Anna exist. That's why we started our boot camps, which is basically other people from the community that we've hired, and we have them teach, for 8 weeks, people how to use Bubble. And that's something that will go forever. I mean, most powerful tools have an educational component. I mean, Photoshop is an example, people, like, it takes many hours, if not months, to learn how to use this tool. And I think it's fine, actually. I think part of me sometimes feels like we need to invest on better education, but it's also we need to make sure that people know the value proposition. Because when I say, and what we actually offer. Because when I say Bubble takes about, maybe 10, let's say 50 hours to learn, very long time, right? 50 hours. But if you tell someone after 50 hours, you can do anything, it's actually not that much if people actually understand that it's true. Because people at the same time are willing to spend, hundreds of hours learning how to code. And it doesn't necessarily get them to a place where they can, build real something. So there is a lot of work to do on the content. So we're doing that, but then also, showcasing better where you can build on bubbles that people know that, yes, there will be some learning, but then they will realize that they actually get very powerful with what they do. I almost want to say one day, maybe we'll put that on our website, no pain, no gain. Like at some point, if you don't spend time learning, you can't do much. Don't be fooled by products that tell you build something in a few minutes.
No code is not learning, right?
The no code is definitely not learning. There is some learning. The problem with the no code word now is that it's a bit messy, right? People would compare us to Notion. How is Notion no code?
The CRM systems, right?
I guess. But then you don't build your own. Like Bubble is not a CRM tool. Bubble lets you build your own CRM. This is meta, you see what I mean? It's different. It's like people compare us to Airtable, I guess, because you have a database, but like you're not going to build an Airbnb or your own CRM that you want to customize on Airtable. Airtable is going to be like, a beautiful cloud-based database. No code puts a lot of companies now, just because there's no code involved, where you don't put your hands on a finger and type code. People think that it's all the same space, but it's not. Like each of these tools actually has a very different value proposition.
What will be like the next level of no code? Like maybe voice code, I don't know, like what's that like in the future in 20 years?
Yeah, I think something around natural language programming is probably where I think the world should go. I would say let's not go there too fast, because if we go there too fast, it's not going to work well. I think some people have tried to do that already and they go too fast. Like the first step, another way to describe what Bubble is our interface. Our interface is basically how can you create that both the computer and a human can understand better.
I'm sorry, I think we have to end now. Thank you very much for your
just give me a second to finish that window. And so we need first to nail that interface that is understandable by both parties before trying to invent a new interface. And I think we're still very early there. So yes, 20 years, maybe natural language programming. In many ways, today it's super fast to build on Bubble. It's a few clicks. I'm not sure it would save that much time to speaking to the computer for the next 10 years.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Amazing.
Yeah, that was amazing. I think lots of questions was answered. And guys, can you please write your thoughts below? I mean,
all right, thank you very much. That was very fun.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I think we'll do this one more time with more people. Thank you again. Thank you guys, Nick, Anna, and Emmanuel, for making this event so awesome.
Yeah. So, thank you very much for having me. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye to all.
Bye.